Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from sequential graphic novel layouts, prehistoric poetic stanzas, and the middle-grade panels of illustrated comics, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of localized culinary structured narrative frameworks, weaponized world-building component deployment loops, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an endangered collection of raw fantasy blueprint assets running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of a scorched algorithmic storytelling laboratory, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of a devastating, high-velocity macro-world design grid with fantasy story recipes by Storyfolk, the exceptional, pulse-pounding contemporary creative workbook and structural drafting system engineered by the absolute, undisputed global sovereign of breathtaking world-building blueprints, bite-sized plot formulas, and high-velocity structural friction, Paige Cody. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads, where an endangered primary writer asset running an unyielding page count extraction loop, a calculating manipulative shadow network of cliché enforcers running an elite proximity tracking and standard sanity erasure routine, and an absolute defense against a terrifying structural deficit confined writer's block containment zone collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn creative journeys where endangered, hyper-observant speculative fiction protagonists must navigate an absolute maze of rigged character arc documentation, corrupt magical system blueprints, and a deadly ring of active personal deadline frame-ups, while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised domestic ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated workspace boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset, weaponizing highly advanced digital distraction mechanics, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, meticulously paced literary kitchen incubator tracking an ambitious speculative fiction creator who deploys modular narrative ingredients and structural dossiers to systematically bake a complete fictional universe before a terminal deadline milestone diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Cody completely dominates the high-precision conceptual jeopardy meets suffocating narrative erasure puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating blank page paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre vargs like Sarah J. Maas, Rebecca Yarros, V.E. Schwab, and Brandon Sanderson, while treating realistic resource allocation logistics, complex dark possessive loyalty arcs, and protective high-density isolation extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse creative asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of a total loss of editorial safety networks, absolute emotional liquidation locks, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a cutthroat modern publishing matrix. Behind our protagonists' rigorous daily footprints, defensive conversational shields, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden structural vulnerabilities, deeply buried speculative instincts, and sharp high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight following an abrupt daily plotting deviation sequence, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat factors from a network of internal distraction forces, parsing complex behavioral shifts in her daily plotting interaction loops, and shielding her vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleaning crew offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. While sorting through a series of blank document grids, our primary asset registers a total security breach when the guide's psychological onboarding sequence initializes an irregular descent into active storytelling logs, systematically tracking bite-sized modular milestones covering narrative pacing, magic rules, and cultural belief files, forcing her into a proximity tracking matrix with an oncoming narrative resolution. Behind the speculative fiction world's pristine, smooth modular facade and elite behavioral mapping style lies an intricate matrix of severe ideological warfare and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial investigation phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a ticking clock timeline, the unauthorized discovery of missing world timelines, hidden magic restrictions, and altered tracking logs reveal that her entire leisure sanctuary was an explicitly engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine domestic courtesy to peaceful civilian compliance protocols crumble, and our central protagonists run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active, invisible war behind closed bedroom doors, where a highly manipulative psychological gaslighting matrix launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her survival data stream and execute her complete systemic erasure. The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the large family living spaces, dark library corridors, and private fortified study rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, shifting dynamically through modular structural guidelines from initial ingredient selection to final structural story architecture loops, determined to deploy deep sensory manipulation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting via digital distraction maneuvers, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of personal legal journals, every silent choice to stand off against an elite apex predator behind standard structural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional, high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the Predator Network's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Paige Cody reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial week 1 ambush or managing an invasive friendship disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and absolute structural supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their building creative survival alliance, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes production breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that deep-seated obsession has tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient protagonist must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a high-velocity creative writing, speculative captivity noir, narrative architecture mystery, and high-velocity contemporary puzzle masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one unsubverted plot hole triggers a fatal deadline showdown energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates carries massive structural weight. Cody writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct, slight scent of polished mahogany, fountain pen ink, heavy matte paper, blueprint charts, dark adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary instructional marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft, alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. Fantasy Story Recipes by Storyfolk is the definitive, pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputtable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track the fleet.